On RKW, brewed by 8th and Rose, the glass breaking can only mean one thing. Every Tuesday morning at 8:20, we catch up with the authority on Tennessee Volunteers athletics. Of course, he is Volquest.com's Austin Price joining us this morning. Austin, what's going on? How are you?
Not great. I mean, it's rainy. It's one of those days where you just want to crawl back in bed. It's pretty nasty out over here in East Tennessee.
It is nasty here as well, certainly. I think there are a lot of Tennessee fans, though, Austin, who are Titans fans who are just happy to get away from the is Mike Vrabel going to continue coaching the Titans conversation for like 20 minutes and talk about transfer portal and an SEC team not winning the national championship last night. So there are some positives, Austin.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the news cycle never stops, right? It's just always turning out something one way or the other.
That's right. Austin, before we get to some of those transfer portal names and specifically some big ones that Tennessee is still recruiting in the transfer portal on the offensive line, I'm curious if there's anything other than just cheating well that you think college athletic departments are learning from Jim Harbaugh and Michigan and just the patience Michigan showed. Is this unique to just Jim Harbaugh, or is there something Tennessee and other Power 5 athletic departments can take away from what they were able to do?
Well, the truth is I think there are several coaches that have been let go over the last 15 or 20 years that, not all, okay? I mean, some of them run their course, but there's some that, if you gave them a fraction more time, if you look at the totality of what they inherited, maybe would have had a little bit more success had they been given what Jim Harbaugh was. Jim Harbaugh, his first, handful of years was pedestrian, then started to turn the corner, then turned the corner fully, and he's beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. He's been to the playoff 3 years in a row. He won a national championship last night. And, if they're not patient with him, if he's not a, quote, Michigan guy who, was trying to flip the script from kind of some pedestrian years there with Brady Hoke and so on and so forth, it probably doesn't happen. But, Michigan was patient with Jim Harbaugh, and he rewarded them handsomely last night.
Austin Price of Volquest and On 3 with us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Austin, let's look at some of the names the transfer portal Tennessee continues to recruit. And let's start with the big one from LSU, Lance Hurd, the tackle. Where does Tennessee see him fitting into their potential 2024 roster? And what's the latest with his recruitment as it comes down to two teams?
Well, Tennessee has had a lot of great dialogue with Z the last 24 to 36 hours. A lot of phone calls. Feel like that one is trending in the right direction. It's not done, but it's certainly been really productive the last 24 hours or so. Tennessee's done a nice job working that one. It is Tennessee and Oklahoma. Ole Miss will not get a visit, I don't believe, and I think that this is going to come down to either, Norman, which is where he was on Sunday, or Knoxville, which is where he was on Saturday. And like I said, I feel like Tennessee's, done a really positive job there. Glenn Elderby's done a nice job working that one. Josh Heupel, and, Tennessee's been, very active there in the last, 12 to 24 hours with Lance Hurd.
Speaking of O-line help, the departure of Gerald Mincey kind of shocked me a little bit. Do you know what led to him jumping into the portal, leaving the Vols?
Well, I think wanting a little bit more money in NIL, Ramon. I mean, it just a different time. And once, he was locked in, he was coming back, and then they passed that new deal where, guys that have transferred once can transfer again and again and again. And that just opened things back up for him, and he wanted to go take his shot to get a little bit more NIL money. So you've seen a few kids like that across the country, that just, hey, they go shoot their shot. They don't know if they're going to play pro football or not. They go try to get as much money as they can now, and I'm not going to blame them for it. They're just taking advantage of the current situation college football's in.
And I have to ask, too, with it being, that the Vols had some really nice four-star pickups as far as the O-line is concerned, I think last year and this year also, man, are they just not ready? You need more time for the high schoolers to develop, because you look at a guy like Bennett Warren, who's a high 4-star, or, Max Anderson, and you just kind of say to yourself, well, what about these guys? Is it that they're not ready and you're in such a win now mode with what the portal allows you to do?
Well, yeah, they're not here yet. I mean, Bennett won't be here till the summertime, and Max Anderson will officially be here to start, and for about another week and a half. So, they're just not ready yet. Very few have been ready as freshmen to play. I mean, Darnell and Wanye were forced out there as freshmen; they weren't ready. Look at what Darnell was, his senior year, and what he was his freshman year. Night and day. Trey Smith is more of an oddity. And you're talking about a guy who was ranked number 1 by ESPN and a 5-star by a lot of the other, recruiting sites, and it just doesn't happen a whole lot, where a guy comes in and plays right away. So, I think that they need 2024 to develop and mature to be ready for 2025. And so, Tennessee's got, John Campbell coming back. They got Cooper Mays, Jamontez Spraggins. Obviously Jackson Lampley played well in the bowl game, and we'll see what Andre Currick can do next year. But Tennessee needs more tackle bodies. That's a definite, and realistically they probably need a guard out of the transfer portal as well.
Austin Price joining us from Volquest this morning on Arcade Dub. Austin, now it's going to be this talk, since we saw Nico Iamaleava in the Citrus Bowl and had a pretty good performance, and everybody wants to start the hype, right? If you're Josh Heupel and company, how do you make sure your team kind of stays in the moment in the offseason, not trying to think too far ahead, not talking preseason polls, when you have a quarterback of that, I guess, stature and the praise that he's already starting to get?
I'm not sure you can do anything to slow it down, Kayla, but I think you just do what you always do, which is kind of, stay in the moment. And, obviously they've got to continue to build around Nico on the offensive line, on the defensive line, and, at receiver. And, obviously I think they'd love to add another piece of tight end if they could, just for, depth's sake. And so I think just kind of stay where you're at, right? I don't think there's anything you can do to kind of stop the train from coming down the tracks.
Right. Coming full force.
It's already left the station. And you know it would, right? I mean, we talked about this last week. If he played well in the bowl game, what was going to happen? It was going to be, what is happening. And so, listen, everybody's excited. They should be excited. Nico's kind of laid-back demeanor and personality, I think, benefits him, because he doesn't ride the wave, right? Like he's just kind of steady Eddie. And I think that's a good thing. I think that, will help him and benefit him heading into the 2024 season.
Wanted to ask you a question just about some Vols that will be trying to up their draft stock, obviously in the next couple of months, I should say. Who has the best chance at really moving up those draft boards, Austin?
You talking about guys that are going to be in the draft in April?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I would have told you Tyler Barron, but he decided not to go to the draft.
Right.
And go to Ole Miss. Jalen Wright's going to test well at the combine. I mean, he is, really good athletically. He can run. He's physical. Be interested to see how he interviews. Just because he's a quiet kid, he's a great kid, just a quiet kid. I mean, I think when he engages, he's really good. So I think if he's coached up, hey man, smile. When you go into those interviews, I think Jalen Wright is someone that NFL fan or NFL teams are going to fall in love with. I said the same thing about Darnell Wright last year. I'm not saying he's going to go top 10 because I don't think that, but I think he may go higher than people think, because I think physically he's built really, really well. And the best thing about Jalen Wright, he just can now buy a beer. I mean, he's just 21. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like he is a young kid, and I think that helps him. And he doesn't have a ton of tread on, or he has a lot of tread on the tires. He's not lost a whole lot of tread, because he didn't play a whole lot in high school, missed his senior year due to COVID, split time here, basically is, and look at him even this year. I mean, he was the bell cow, but I mean, every game's like, he had 12 carries for 110 yards, and 9 yards a carry again. I mean, like, he just was super productive. So that one makes a lot of sense to me. I think McAllen Castles will be very similar as far as just kind of like, I'm not saying going first or second day, but I think it ends up being a really productive draft pick for Tennessee. And then, defensively, we'll see kind of what happens with a guy like Aaron Beasley or, anybody in the secondary.
Austin Price of Volquest with us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Austin, when you look at this offensive line and Tennessee missing out on 2 more transfers, headed one to Ole Miss, another one picking Texas A&M within the SEC, is this staff concerned about the misses it's had specifically on the offensive line? Is this a 2024 problem, or is this more looking down the road in 2025? Tennessee's a little worried about where they are on the offensive line.
Well, I think you have to be kind of concerned about projecting out. If you think about it, in 2025, you won't have Cooper Mays, you won't have John Campbell, you won't have Jackson Lampley, you won't have Javonte Spraggins. Like those guys aren't able to return. There's no more kind of like, hey, come back for your COVID year, and you can't do that. You have to make a move on some different guys, and so I think that trying to prepare for 25 in the trenches, both offensive line and defensive line, is something that is very important to the staff, and they realize that that's something that projecting out in year 2 of Nico, they need to have a plan.
In year 2 of Nico, of course, when he's on schedule to win his 2nd straight Heisman, if you talk to a lot of people. So we set the over-under at 3.5 Heisman, so that's going to be a big year for him. Austin, I love the Vol Club Confidential and the conversations you guys are able to have there. You got a great one up with Rick Barnes right now and an extended conversation with him. Really cool getting to listen to a lot of that. What stuck out to you the most from that conversation, and just how good is life for Rick Barnes right now with his point guard, Zakai Ziegler, back to normal?
Well, it's really good. Playing really good basketball as a team. Obviously, they're on the road tomorrow night, down in Starkville at the Hump, and you like kind of where this team's at. I will continue to reiterate, I think Dalton Connect is back to being one of the best scorers in the league by the end of the SEC season. Like right now, he's kind of in that. Rick let him have some leeway. Now we're coaching him a certain way. I think by the middle part of the SEC season, he's going to be back to being all of a sudden, boom, 23 points, 20 points, 19 points, right? Like, he's kind of have a few down games here. The other night, 3 of 6, 8 points. But the biggest thing I think take away from my conversation with Rick as far as the Vol Club Confidential, I thought 2 stories stood out. One, when he went as a 10-year-old boy to bail out his older brother out of jail, and he was taken by his grandfather only because his grandfather did not know how to read and write, and he had to sign his grandfather's name. Wow. I thought that was fascinating. And the other story that really stood out was, why he doesn't cuss. And he never cussed. His grandfather taught him a certain way. And then when he was early on in his coaching career, one of his assistant coaches said, "Man, if you don't start cussing these kids, they're gonna quit on you." So he started doing it. And he goes, I fell into this really bad habit, at Providence and Clemson and, Texas. And he goes, early on at Texas, I think it was Damian James, the Post, he was like, "Hey, Damian, man, how can I help you?" And he's like, "Coach, I'm sorry I let you down." And he said, "What do you mean? Like, you didn't let me down. Like, how can I help you?" And he goes, "Well, Coach, I've never really had a, father figure in my life. I've been raised by all women. Like, can you please not cuss me? When you cuss me, I feel like I'll let you down." And he never cussed a kid ever again.
That's really interesting.
And just a fascinating story. And again, Coach Barnes, God love Rick, man. He is long-winded. Yeah. I think I asked like 5 questions in like 50 minutes. Right. And which is a bit of an exaggeration, but he literally will take you from A to B in a story, but he hits every other letter in the alphabet getting back to B. I'm like, where are we going with this? And it all comes back. It all comes back full circle. But just a good guy, man. He really is, and he's an older coach who I think. And you talk about people that adapt. I think has adapted well to the new modern basketball. And I think some people thought he wouldn't, but I think I think he loves the transfer portal. It's like, oh, I can go recruit for 2 weeks and have the whole roster. I mean, like, it's just different in basketball. I mean, football, you can't really do that. Like, you can't recruit 85 guys, but you can recruit, 5 or 6 guys out of the portal in a couple of weeks span and mix in some high school kids, and your roster's pretty well set. So again, Coach Barnes has done a nice job, and that team is extremely deep, and they're versatile in a lot of different ways, whether it be their bigs with Awaka and Jonas Adu, and then obviously their guard play, and then Ziegler coming back has been fantastic, right? I mean, I don't know, Rick, I don't think will say he's totally back, but I mean, I don't know how much better you can get for Z right now. He's playing really good basketball.
That's what I was going to ask you. Austin Price with us this morning. Volquest is, how do you feel about this team? I know we can be wild as Vols fans, man, but their losses, of course, are top 10 teams, and they fell out of the top 10 and worked their way back up to 5. How was the environment Saturday if you was there? And just how do you feel about this squad, Austin?
Oh, I feel great about it. I mean, like you look at, again, how deep they are, how versatile they are. I mean, a guy like Meshack is a total Swiss Army knife. He hits 2 threes right there at the end of the first half the other day. But, I mean, what's he known as? The defensive stopper. But guess what? When Z went down last year, what he plays, he plays point guard. Like, he literally just kind of moves into whatever area they need him to, and he just thrives. I mean, he's the ultimate Rick Barnes player, right? He's a team guy. And much like Kevin Punter, much like, Robert Hubbs, a few other guys over the years, he has learned such an improved technique shooting the basketball under Coach Barnes. I mean, offensively, he was a liability. To put this in Ramon terms, as far as when you were here, he was like the Stanley Asumnu of this roster, right? Like an incredible athlete, didn't have much in the form of a shot, and now all of a sudden, when he puts up a 3, you're like, that's got a pretty good shot of going in. And I mean, like he's turned himself into a really good player. So again, just extremely deep. Vescovy, Josiah Jordan James, right down the line. Like any of those guys are capable of putting up 18 to 20 on any given night. And what Jonas Adu has done and continued to improve and be is really, really impressive. So I mean, this basketball team is again, long way to go. And you look at their losses, what are they, the 1-3 and 7 or whatever it is? I mean, it's ridiculous. None of those were one was on the road and 2 were on the neutral court over in Hawaii. And so I think that schedule benefits this team the next 2 months as they head into the SEC tournament, in March.
He is Austin Price at Austin Priceless, covering Tennessee for Volquest and On 3. And if you have not yet checked out that conversation with Rick Barnes, it is well worth your time on the Vol Club Confidential. You can find it on volquest.com. Austin, great stuff as always. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Austin.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
I love that from Rick Barnes about not cussing. I know Vanderbilt fans will remember that, and Bobby Johnson, who would find any way possible, dadgum, bull junk, whatever it took to not cuss. I love that.
I love that too, man.
I'm
That's
a big
awesome.
fan of Rick Barnes.
I like it in every instance besides the KFC commercial where Deion Sanders says, "Cut the bull jive, hand me one of them wings." I do not like that commercial.
I side with you.
I like the one more where Kirk Cousins decides he's going to motivate his wide receivers by giving them KFC.
I'm down with that.
There's nothing else I need to add to that.
Who's Madman Department
Well, we're talking about it.
thought that was okay. Oh, my
so good.
God.
615-737-1045. We'll catch up on your thoughts on Mike Vrabel, the uncertainty around his situation. We'll start with Caples and Jeremy on the phone lines when we come back.